Welcome back. We are back again, another live stream. This is Cody with F is for Fanatics. We got Dave in the house today, and we're going to talk a little bit of Gator football. I'm sure everybody knows who Dave is. He is the Gators Twitter god. He's got two howitzers strapped to his body for arms.
I don't know
His
about all
meme
that.
game is undefeated. I tried to get Bruce Buffer on to introduce him for the podcast, but Bruce was busy. So how are you doing, Dave?
Yeah, doing good, man. Woodstock, Georgia, the weather's starting to it decides it wants to get warm one day, then get cold the next. It's kind of like back and forth. I know in Florida it's a little bit different. You got more of the humid temperatures, probably around like 70 right now, maybe 80, somewhere in that range. Up here it's 60, 65, 70 for one day, and then the next day it'll be 47 degrees for the high. So
yeah, I'm in the heartland of Indianapolis area, so it's cold all the time. This year around. So no snow right now, but so how'd you become the Twitter god and really decided the Gators were your brand?
Well, I mean, I've been a Gator fan ever since I was little, around like 6 years old, when I could understand what sports were. My dad was a big Miami Hurricanes fan. I grew up in a family full of Big Three: Florida State, Miami, you name it. It was all in the family. I still get text messages every time we lose. So, the family rivalry is still pretty good right there. So, yeah, man, I became a fan when I was little, and man, ever since then I've been following the Gators, good or bad. Moved to Woodstock, Georgia. Of course, it's Georgia Bulldog territory up here, and of course, as I said, anytime we lose a game, it's not just my family; it's Georgia fans on top of that too. So, yeah, man, I decided I created a Twitter account, I think a long time ago, back in 08, 09, and I never really used it. I just created it and just checked it out, and I didn't decide to get into Twitter probably around like 2018-ish or so is when I finally started to get on the Twitter waves. I really wasn't that big of a Facebook guy. Got in some of the Florida Gator Facebook groups and decided to move to Twitter, man. And I noticed that a lot of the guys that I talked to, like David Waters, he's one of my really, really good close friends. He was involved in Twitter a little bit. So I kind of decided to join Twitter and decided to start a podcast. After that, I was invited to go to Chomp Talk, do their podcast. And then after a year or so, Gator Country contacted me, asked me if I wanted to host their podcast as well. Did that for a little bit and kind of decided just to kind of venture off and try something myself. And Getting Swamped was born again from 2018 now to 2021. And it's kicked off pretty well, man. I've gotten a good response from a lot of people. A lot of people download it, listen to it, and got to keep going, man. I mean, you got listeners and people want to hear what your opinion is. And that's really, it's humbling. It's humbling in a way. So, yeah, man, 50 or so episodes through Getting Swamped, lots of downloads, lots of support, and just rolling with it, man. Just love it.
Yeah. So you kind of got a big following on the iTunes, Spotify, stuff like that, right? As opposed to YouTube. So doing it a different way.
Yeah, so I just started YouTube. I had the YouTube channel for a while, but I was just posting the audio versions of my podcast, and people were like, "Why don't you just do the video?" So I just started doing videos of all of my interviews as well. So now I'm starting to get a little bit more subs there, and only 400 right now, but who knows what it'll be in a year or so or anything else like that. But yeah, man, anybody that wants to check out the video versions of any of my interviews, I do post those on YouTube as well. The audio format comes out quicker than YouTube because YouTube takes a while to obviously crunch numbers, or I think they got to do something. You upload stuff in HD format, it's got to process and all that. So it takes a little bit longer, maybe 30 minutes after the podcast is posted on the audio. But yeah, man, just started doing the YouTube thing here. So we'll see how that goes.
Yeah, I saw that Miles Graham interview. That was a good one. So you're doing a good job down there with Getting Swamped. So me being a new podcaster, I kind of watch High Top Sports. I always give them the shameless plug. Love those guys over there. They're the ones that got me into doing this.
Shelton's mad, man.
Yeah, that guy's wild. He never stops grinding. So
yeah, him and Holly are good people, man.
Yeah, definitely. So So what's kind of your feel on the health of the program? You know, obviously Mullen gets fired, we get Napier in. Things are not going great as Mullen gets fired mid-year. You kind of Mullen burned a lot of bridges with a lot of high school. We had the IMG curse, stuff like that. So how are you feeling, a guy that's really connected in to the program? What are your thoughts on Billy? Have you talked to Billy? Um, and what are you feeling that the program? What's the trajectory of it?
I always said this, like right at the beginning, I said it's going to get a lot worse before it gets better. If you look at the situation that Dan Mullen left Billy Napier with, it wasn't the best situation at all. I mean, you had kids posting dried up bacon that they were eating in the facilities, and you had a lot of other players coming out tweeting something and then deleting it, like maybe a minute or two later. And you could see that there was players upset, with the parking tickets, all sorts of all
Yeah.
this other stuff. The facility was like 10 years too late to be built. That was a big issue there with Jeremy Foley. Um, uh, just a number of things that Billy Napier was walking into. Like he didn't, we compared Kirby Smart's tenure to Billy Napier's I think it was on Shelton's show or something.
Mm-hmm.
But I said Kirby Smart was in a better situation. Like Georgia already had those facilities. Georgia was a premier program already with Mark Richt. I mean, they were averaging 9, 10 wins every season. They just couldn't get over the hump. Anytime they played Alabama, couldn't get it done. Kirby Smart comes in here with national championships from Nick Saban at Alabama, comes to Georgia, gets Georgia over the hump. I mean, Georgia wasn't exactly recruiting less than top 10 when he got there. I mean, they were in the top 10, sometimes top 5 in some years. Billy Napier didn't really have that when he came to Florida. I mean, Dan Mullen wasn't an elite recruiter at all. He would take anybody he could get, whether would qualify or not. A lot of those recruiting classes you look at from the past that Dan Mullen had, I mean, minus the attrition, they're not really that good. Billy Napier gets here, and I interviewed probably 10 kids, thanks to the Gator Collective setting me up with those interviews. And I asked a lot of these kids, that were part of the Mullen tenure when Billy Napier came in. They said it's night and day difference. No more parking tickets. Kids are accountable now. Obviously, you hear about the phases, the foundation, and all that other kind of stuff. And I interviewed about 10 of these kids, and they said, man, Billy Napier does not put up with this, does not put up with that. It's a whole night and day difference. And I think a lot of those kids, you saw 20 plus players go into the transfer portal.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't really, like they said, oh, we got rid of the Mullen guys, we got rid of the bad attitudes. In a way, I look at it as this: it's like when you're a head coach, you're their father figure, right? So if you get them used to doing something, they're going to keep doing it until you can get them not used to doing it. So Billy
Correct.
Napier comes in, kids aren't used to it. They're just like, dude, I don't like this. I'm going to go in the portal, go somewhere else, which is fine. I mean, that's a kid's choice. I mean, coaches change all the time. Kids should be able to transfer if they want to. So, minus the 20 kids, Billy Napier's having to start all over once again and try to get his guys in there now. So now you see 10 transfer portal guys here. And I try to tell everybody, look, I think Billy Napier is a really good evaluator of talent. If you look at the last class, all the best players last year were guys from the transfer portal. Ricky Persall. I mean, you had Osiris Torrance, Cameron Waits. He has yet to play. Montrell Johnson, I believe he rushed 700 or 800 yards this year, sharing carries with Trevor Etienne. I mean, the guys that Billy Napier literally brought in are the best guys on the team. Now, is that going to translate to next year with all the transfers he brought in this year? I do not know. But I think, as I said, Billy Napier was put in a hard spot, and I think Florida Gator fans, we're impatient people. So am I. I want to win. I want to win games just like anybody else. But I think with Billy Napier and him walking into the situation that Dan Mullen left behind is going to take more time than when Mullen walked in with Jim McElwain recruits and was able to win 10 games or so. We already know Dan Mullen's one heck of an offensive play caller. That's fine. But he did all of that and had all that success with Jim McElwain guys. I mean, Kyle Trask, Jim McElwain guy. Kyle Pitts, Jim McElwain guy. Kadarius Toney, Jim McElwain guy. Now he brought in Van Jefferson and Trayvon Grimes from the portal. I mean, those were good kids. Jonathan Grenard was another good kid from the portal. But other than that, I mean, you played pretty much with guys you didn't recruit. You got your guys in that you did recruit, and you're winning 6 games. So Billy Napier's got a long hill to battle. He's going to need more time. I hate to say that. I know a lot of Florida Gator fans don't want to hear that. But I think with the situation that Billy Napier was left with, insert NIL on top of that, which has been kind of a conundrum for Florida and some other schools out there too, kind of a little bit harder. It's brand new. It's a whole new thing. And Billy Napier never had to deal with that at Louisiana Lafayette. So I'd say for Florida Gator fans, be patient a little bit. Let Billy cook. That's all I got to say about just basically that whole situation.
Yeah. And when people try to compare Billy Napier and what he walked into and Kirby Smart and what Kirby walked into, it's like
it's night and day.
Kirby walked into a fully built race team. They just need the driver.
Yep.
They were missing the driver. Billy Napier, the lights weren't even on in the garage. The car was in pieces. I mean, the motor was still coming UPS. You know what I mean? It's just it drives me nuts when people try to compare those two programs, because obviously they're doing big things in Georgia. But they weren't great for a very, very long time. It takes a long time. And I feel like Gator fans, there's a lot of them, unfortunately, that it's natty or nothing. And that's just unrealistic.
Yeah, I'm kind of the same way. Like, I did not expect to win a lot of games last year. And if you look at last year too, a lot of the games we lost wasn't by a lot of points. Of course, you lost by like 20 plus to Georgia. I mean, Georgia was a powerhouse last year anyway. But you hung in there with them. You hung in there with them for about what? I think they went down 28-3 and then caught back up 28-20. And then unfortunately, towards the end, everybody gets gassed and things like that happen. But you hung in there with Georgia. You lost a lot of games by one possession, maybe 10 points. You didn't really get blown out. I mean, you're not in a situation Miami's in right now. Apparently, they're in a whole bad situation.
They're in a full. Yeah, it's incredible. They're
even
in
with
a
the recruiting class
collapse out of season.
Yeah, I mean, you've had Corrani McClain go to Colorado. You've had Antoine Jackson ask out of his NLI right now. I mean, still got the number 6 recruiting class or number 7. I mean, it's not going to change even if Jackson leaves.
Gone.
Yeah, the DC's gone. You're still looking for an OC.
Linebacker coach.
Yeah, it could be a lot worse is what I'm trying to say. And that's not me taking a shot at Miami. Who knows who they pick up? Who knows what they do in the future towards recruiting or anything? But I'd say that fans shouldn't be as negative towards it, I guess. I know there's fans out there that aren't, and they're patient. There's some that are negative and impatient, and that's just what happens with any fan base. You can Clemson fans, Oklahoma fans, Ohio State fans, they all have them too. Like impatient fans, it just happens in every fan base.
Yeah, I saw fans calling for Saban's head after not making the playoffs, which was just...
Isn't that crazy?
Yeah, I mean, there are people out there that I did make a small video on this. We could win 3 natties in a row, and we could still lose in recruiting to Georgia, and people would say, well, it's not sustainable. Georgia's still out recruiting us. I know we just won 3 natties in a row, but it doesn't matter. They're going to catch us. Yeah. It's just, it's wild, but
I would kill for a 10 to 11 win season be a bad season.
Yeah. Fan does stand for fanatic. That's kind of what I made the show about. So let's break into this commitment class of 2023.
All right.
First off, you go get Kelby Collins out of Nick Saban's backyard. Billy Napier, you got to pat yourself on the back for that, right?
Oh, yeah. That was a huge pickup for Billy Napier. And that was an early pickup, too, as well, especially winning that MVP of that Under Armour All-American game, too. Really shot his ranking up. Believe he was, 42nd in the composite, which I think 24/7, it goes up to 35 or 38 5-stars per period. So he's basically almost a 5-star, Kelby Collins. So that was a good pickup to get there, especially, like you said, out of Nick Saban's backyard. Anytime you can beat Nick Saban or Alabama or even Georgia for a recruit, that's a win.
Yeah. Jakeem Jackson next, a guy we get very, very early in his recruiting and his personal recruiting. The guy just keeps climbing every day. He's getting a bump up the draft boards. And we're going to say this over and over again. I think Billy Napier and company may be the best talent evaluators right now in the nation.
Oh yeah. Anytime you see somebody take a recruit in a class, no matter where they're ranked, say they're ranked 300 or 400, and then by the end of the class they're in the top 100 or even top 50. Jakeem Jackson's a perfect example. You know that that staff evaluated that player and knew what kind of talent they were getting. If you were to ask me, and this isn't me blowing smoke just because I'm a Florida fan, I mean I've watched Jakeem Jackson play. I think he's the best corner in the class, if you were to ask me. Or if he's not the best corner, he's number two or number three. Obviously, the rankings don't say that. He's composite 55.
Hmm.
But look at how far this guy climbed. I mean, I believe he was ranked in the 300s by the time here. I'll go ahead and look real quick. He
and and
was,
still very, very raw, from what I'm told.
yeah, of course. Yeah, he was ranked 493 when he started, got up to the top 250 around July of last year. And then from July of last year all the way to January of this year, from 266 all the way to 55. So
Incredible.
that will tell you right there that Billy Napier and the staff, they do evaluate talent. They do their research, which is what I like. And Jim McElwain kind of did it too. Of course, he didn't have great recruiting classes, but like look at all the production you got out of the Jim McElwain guys when Dan Mullen got here. All you needed was a good OC. And
Yeah,
that's something Jim McElwain couldn't do. He couldn't recruit defense and he couldn't recruit a good OC. You bring in a good OC like Dan Mullen, a good offensive play caller, and look what he can do with all that talent. Unfortunately, Dan Mullen was not the best recruiter or evaluator when his guys came in there, and then you see what happens. So, um,
exactly.
yeah, hopefully we can get the best of both worlds with this new staff.
Yeah, most definitely. I think it's less volatile too. It's more even keel. The class is split up nicely. Even when you look at the transfers too, we'll get into those guys. Next, you go out and Billy Napier says, "Look, um, the big body wide receiver thing is done. We're going for speed. Speed kills. You go out and get a legit track athlete. Mom and dad both track stars
Yep.
at the collegiate level. Good bloodlines. You go out and get Aiden Mazzell."
Yeah, Aiden Mazzell, he's interesting because he was injured, believe for most of this year, so he couldn't really play. So I believe he's
Correct.
still ranked 90th, even without playing. If you can still be ranked in anywhere near the top 100 and not play for almost a full year, that just shows that these recruiting sites believe in your potential as a next player. And if you go look at his film, the thing that I think what really makes Aiden Mazzell a threat is his acceleration, especially after his cuts. I mean, once he gets the ball in his hands, he's off. He's off to the races. Like it does not take him a long time to get to that speed. And you see that with these wide receivers that Nick Saban recruits every year. I mean, all these guys that he's put in the NFL with these wide receivers. Of course, he was offered by Alabama too, offered by Georgia, offered by all the schools that normally you have to battle every year. You were able to get Aiden Mazzell early, of course, obviously with the two Florida Gators that he put on his commitment there. But you're getting a good kid too. I mean, kid's never been in trouble. Good head on his shoulders, and it's a phenomenal talent. I mean, him and Eugene Wilson. If you've ever seen Eugene Wilson, I think I posted a video of Eugene Wilson the other day, just practicing. He's the same way. A
Oh my,
quick acceleration from
they
the cut.
they get to top speed in 3 steps.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's what Billy Napier targeted. I mean, even with Andy Jean running 22.5 miles per hour for Andy Jean, 200 pounds. I mean, you've got
Yeah,
three wide receivers with
and people
speed.
don't think Andy Jean's a speedster.
Yeah,
They think he's
well,
a route tactician that he's going to beat you on the route. Boy, watch out! Wait till they see him on the field. And some guys are they're football fast. You know what I mean?
yep. Yeah, I mean, you can't teach speed. I mean, you can teach speed, but you can't teach it. If you get what I'm saying, like you can say, hey, run this route this way, do this way, do whatever. But the speed's always going to be there. You just got to be
Always.
able to utilize that speed and put it in its best position to win. And I think Billy Napier and staff recruited that speed for this class. And obviously, with the wide receivers we're losing this year, I mean, you can come in, especially being that fast and that elite. You can come in as a freshman and be, an impact player instantly when you come to the University of Florida. Now, of course, you got Quavian Frazier's and some of the other receivers. I like what he's done too. You got Ricky Pearsall coming back as well. It's going to be a different wide receiver core for Graham Mertz when he gets here. Oh, actually, he already is here, but it's going to be a different wide receiver core for Graham Mertz and a wide receiver core he didn't have at Wisconsin.
Yeah, most definitely. And truthfully, between Billy Napier and Kelby Collins, I think they could pick out one or two good wide receivers.
Oh,
you
yeah.
know what I mean? That they kind of have a knack for it. So
And I'm sure in the spring portal period they'll probably go after a wide receiver. I don't know, but I know Billy Napier did clue into going to get another quarterback for the spring portal period. So we'll see how
just
that
for
goes
depth,
too.
you got to.
Yeah,
I mean,
definitely.
when we get into the schedule, and Chris Dorian said it best. I don't know if you listen to him. There's a difference between having depth and SEC depth.
Yeah, he's right. I mean, even when you go back to the Rashada thing, and I mean, nobody's going to pay $13 million for a kid. You don't see Ohio State doing it. You don't see Alabama doing it. You don't see Clemson. And the narrative of like Florida went back on their promise or didn't have the money or anything. That contract was not even supposed to be for that amount anyway. So as Chris Doring said, nobody's going to pay $13 million for a quarterback. So obviously he goes to Arizona State, see what he does there. But as I said, you need another quarterback, and that's what you were targeting anyway in this class. So yeah, spring portal period, like you said, SEC depth. You might even make out even better getting a guy out of the portal and missing on Jaden Rashada or him going to Arizona State if you can get a good SEC caliber quarterback that can start day one.
Sorry.
Oh, yeah, that's fine.
So we go in the offensive line. Hopefully my mic was muted there.
Oh yeah, it was.
We go in the offensive line and we go get Roderick Kearney. Sorry, Roderick, if you see me, don't come find me because I butchered your name.
I'm butchering names too, man. So don't worry about it.
6'4", 300 pounds, out of Florida again, Orange Park. So we have continued to see a trend of Florida players here with the Billy Napier regime.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at offensive line recruiting, and I think Bill Sykes did a good little study and article on this, the offensive line recruiting has been terrible ever since the Urban Meyer years. I mean, I think your highest offensive lineman you recruited since then was Richard Garage, and I think he was top 100. Other than that, you've been taking guys 400, 500, 600. And I'll say this, offensive linemen are one of the hardest positions to scout, evaluate, because, I mean, all you need to do is get somebody that's big and can block. I mean, pretty much. They got to be able to move, though. Got to be able to get their hands going and move. And Florida hasn't really recruited that well at offensive line for a decade. And to just get Roderick Kearney in this class, one of the highest rated offensive linemen that you've had in a long time, besides Richard Garage, that's a feather in the cap for this staff. And of course, the transfers that you brought in. I mean, Keontae Goodwin, this guy was almost a 5-star in his class, and he's still got, I think, 3 years of eligibility left. You get him from Kentucky. You've got just Damian George from Alabama. I mean, these guys are 6'6", 350. A lot of these guys have a lot of size and a lot of tall.
Caden Jones out of Louisiana. So you go yank one right out from LSU's home turf too, right? He's a New Orleans kid.
Yeah, and he's rated at 365 nationally, but I'll tell you this, like anytime that they put you in an Under Armour All-American game, they see something in you, right? So no matter where you're rated, they see something. So to get Caden Jones on top of that, 6'8", 330 pounds it's just a freshman coming in. I mean, you've got a lot of size coming into that offensive line. And I even said this, and I was talking to a few other guys. I said, even with, Osiris Torrance gone, I think with the guys that are coming in and through the portal, I think the offensive line might even be better than it was last year. But we'll just have to see what happens, I guess. But yeah, man, I love the offensive lineman that this staff is bringing in. I'm loving the fact that, I mean, you were in it for Samson Okunlola. You were in it for Francis Mayagoa, or however you say his last name. Fortunately, they go to Miami, whatever. But you make up for it in the portal anyway. I mean, it's going to be interesting just watching how this offensive line unfolds. And Billy Napier loves to run the ball. So you already got 2 talented running backs behind that offensive line as well. Trevor Etienne, only a sophomore. You still got years of eligibility for Montrell Johnson, and then you got Trayon Webb coming in. And
you got the kid from Tulane, the scat back.
Yep. He runs like a 4.4. He's a pretty speedy back too. So, I mean, you've got good guys behind that offensive line. So it'll be really interesting to see how the run game, unfolds. And hopefully it'll help out Graham Mertz too. I mean, you go back to his Wisconsin days, his offensive line sucked. They were terrible.
It was bad. Yeah,
his receivers were not good either.
No.
A lot of people look at those stats, and I did too. Even when we got Graham Mertz, I wasn't excited about it. I was like, Graham Mertz, whatever. So I pulled up his numbers anyway. I watched some film, and PFF does a lot. It does really good numbers when it comes to like adjusted completion rating. I believe his completion rating was like 60, 61 over at Wisconsin, but they factor in on target throws and drops by the receivers. So if you have an on target throw and the receiver drops it, they still count it. And it came out to be like 69%. So it's just like, maybe with a new offensive line, maybe with better receivers.
Well, he's not going to get hit 25 or 6 times, whatever he took sacks for. And that's sacks. That's not including pressures in your face. They ran a bad scheme down there. They would run the ball 3-4 times. And listen, I'm not telling you guys this because I'm hopping on the Mertz bandwagon. I've watched a lot of Wisconsin football. My dad is a UW alum. He was ready to burn his jersey. Okay, guys, the play calling was terrible. They go out and get Brandon Ingram, a wide receiver from the NFL, thinking that was going to spice it up. Didn't happen. They were still running the ball 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 times in a row. They'd get 3rd and 12, 3rd and 13, and expect Mertz to throw behind a bad offensive line. His best tight end leaves for the NFL draft the year before. So what are you going to do?
Right. It's very predictable. It's you basically you drop down in coverage for the 2 runs, and then you blitz on 3rd down. And that's all you really do. And that's how you stop that offense. Very Doug Nussmeier-ish, if you were to ask me. Of course, they didn't go for play action on 3rd down a lot, but I mean, it's pretty much the same kind of offense if you look at it. So I'm hoping all those keys together makes Graham Mertz a better quarterback than what we think he could be.
And we're not talking about slouch defenses up there in the Big Ten.
Right. I mean,
we're not talking Big 12, Pac-12 defenses over there.
Yeah, they don't play defense over there. I mean, going up against people like Ohio State, who recruits in the top 3 every year, and I mean, some of those Big Ten teams don't play defense, but the defense is a lot better in the Big Ten than it is Pac-12 and some of the other conferences. So, yeah, especially, I mean, it doesn't even really matter if you don't have a good offensive line, you're cooked as a quarterback anyway. Cooked. So.
All right, so we go down to Cameron James, defensive line. Obviously, Cox gets kind of the boot mid-season. Yep. I was never a big Cox fan. That was just personally me. And then, we go get Cameron James. What's kind of your feeling with him? And this defensive line, they kind of did both the same thing on the offensive and defensive line. They mixed the bag. You get a couple kids, high school, 4 years eligibility, obviously, and then you go in the transfer portal and get some guys that have been in a college program. I like that personally on the offensive and defensive line. There's nothing they're going to do their first 2 years in college but put on weight and eat and get big on the offensive and defensive line. So let's talk out Mr. James here, defensive line. He's out of Orlando, Florida, another Florida kid. What do you think about him?
Watch some of the Under Armour All-American game. He did pretty good. I wouldn't say, of course, he didn't win MVP or anything like Helby Collins, but he did pretty good. He got some pressures on the quarterback. A lot of those Under Armour games, I mean, you really can't really take away much from them, but you can kind of see the potential of a recruit coming into your school and playing with the best of the best across the nation. So for him to be able to just get pressures, I believe maybe he had 1 sack. I can't remember. Cameron James, though, I mean, good size, 6'7", 265, ranked 164th nationally. This is a guy that I personally did like in the class. I actually like the combination of him and Will Norman, too. Will Norman actually had some really good Under Armour All-American practices as well. I caught up with Connor Clark there and talked to him about that because he was at those practices. So we don't get to see a lot of it. We just see some of the films and the matchups. But, you get somebody... Yeah, you get somebody from Sports Illustrated that can sit there and watch it all. He could tell you, and he was very impressed with Cameron James and Will Norman both. And Will Norman, obviously, an IMG kid, transferred back to Eastside for his senior year. You still break that IMG curse. I count it as an IMG guy. He just decided he wanted to transfer.
So that's 4 since Napier.
Yeah. I think it's 4 IMG guys since Billy Napier, and I mean that's another pipeline you weren't able to open with past coaches. Dan Mullen couldn't do it. Jim McElwain couldn't do it.
How many with Mullen?
0. I think. I think one. I think it was. I can't remember. One of them was at IMG and then transferred. But he's no longer. No, Kamar Wilcoxon is who it was. I believe that was at IMG for a little bit and then transferred back. But if you want to count that, okay, you got 1. Billy Napier's already gotten 4. Maybe I think he's gotten more than 4, but I have to go back and look. But I mean, you're looking at him breaking the IMG curse, breaking the offensive line recruiting curse. And I mean, things are starting to slowly unfold. It's not quite there yet, obviously, with 20 commits in the class. The average player rating is better, the quality is better, but you want to be able to take more than 20 commits in a class. You want to get like 24, 25, somewhere in there. And that's why we're rated at 14, because we only have 20 commits in the class. A lot of people look at the ranking and say, oh, we did terrible, which is, yeah, you don't want to be 14th and be playing in the SEC and be fifth in the SEC or whatever. But with 20 commits compared to the teams in front of you that have like 25, 26, I think Ohio State has the same amount of commits we do, and they're like 93 and they're ranked 6th or 7th. That's where you kind of want to be in recruiting. If you get 20 commits, it's like right up there in the top 5. I would say we're not quite there yet. We did have some NIL conundrums happen at the beginning. And I think I've heard that they've had meetings and they've talked about it. And Florida NIL is going to change now with the new law that they're going to pass here, where coaches can get involved with the deals and all that other kind of stuff. So that'll be interesting to look at as well. But I think with NIL and it being new and him coming to the SEC, it's a learning experience. And right now, so far, the 2024 class has taken off to extreme heights, man. I mean, your player average is like at 96 right now. Of course, you only got 4 commits. It's going to change drastically towards the end of the season. I mean, you already got 2 5-star guys in the class. I know Miles Graham, I just got done interviewing him. He's ranked 30th. 24/7 usually does 35 to 37 5-stars every year. Of course, they expand those as the season goes on, but if he's ranked in the 30s, he's pretty much a 5-star right now. He's the second linebacker in the class, or rated number 2 linebacker in the class. So you already got a good start for 2024. I would say, and I even said this, I hope Billy Napier can buy him another year, because you're going to need those kids to grow into those positions towards, Graham Mertz coming out and all that, and then DJ Lagway starting. Of course, you got to hold on to the kids too as well. But you're going to have to buy you some time. And I think now, to me personally, if it's me and the boosters and president, whatever, whoever decides to hire and fire the AD, I think you give Billy Napier a little bit more time. I mean, I'm kind of tired of switching coaches every year. And even say he wins 6 games this year. Again, does that recruiting class look like it's top 5, top 3? I'll wait for that. I mean, if you can get some elite kids in here and then you can coach them up, okay, well, we'll give you another year or 2 if those recruiting classes are looking really good. So, as I said, man, Billy Napier has an uphill battle, but I do like the defensive lineman, the offensive lineman he brought in, and he said it from the get-go. He said it's a line of scrimmage game. I mean, you got to win in the trenches, and that's what Billy Napier took care of right when he first got here. He knew he needed defensive linemen. He knew he needed offensive linemen, and I think Billy Napier's taking care of that.
Well, in 6 wins, you talk 6 wins if he gets 6 wins. If we're 6 wins and we lose the rest to close 1-score games, it doesn't hurt recruiting. It's when you go out there and you start laying eggs and you look like you're unorganized and stuff like that kids kind of shy away from.
Well, I'll say this: Miami doesn't have that class without NIL.
Oh yeah, for sure.
And they've lost what, Cormani McClain and Jackson.
Yeah, I talked about a little bit, like, Miami, their class is kind of collapsing, and those are the same fans that made fun of Jimbo, said he couldn't get together. At least he made it midway through the season.
Yeah, and they're losing defensive, offensive coordinators. They're firing first year. I mean, you brought these guys in, you paid them money, and you're already getting rid of them after year 1 with guys that they didn't even recruit. I mean, come on, man. You have to give your assistants time. And I think Billy Napier did that. I mean, you look at the defense, man. I mean, the defense was bad this year. Billy Napier still holding on to his defensive coordinators, still believing in them. And as I said, you got to give coaches time to get their players in and coach them at their positions. And I believe you should give an assistant 3 years tops. If they can't get it, if you don't see any improvement, go somewhere else. I just think it's stupid to fire an offensive coordinator, defensive coordinator the first year that they're there, because it's just, I mean, you look at Will Muschamp, how many offensive coordinators did he have? Never put together an offense because he could never find an offensive coordinator and give them time. And that was ultimately Will Muschamp's demise, was not giving an offensive coordinator time to get his receivers in and play to their strengths and play the kind of scheme that they want to play.
Yeah, and truthfully, when you do that, coaches don't want to go there. They don't. If you're firing them left and right, that's a bad coaching culture.
Yeah. So your dog's all excited back there too.
Yeah, he's. I tell you, he's
Yeah,
enough.
and like I
Lay
said,
down.
it's not me being biased or trashing Miami or anything like that. I mean, of course, I joke on Twitter and all that, but I'm more of a serious person, and then that could go for any school. Like firing your offensive and defensive coordinator the first year, and then bringing in 2 new ones, and then firing them. I mean, you got to think, what do those kids think? Like they just signed with Miami, they signed their letter of intent, now they're enrolled, and now the guys that were recruiting them, the OCs and the DCs, they're all gone. So, I mean, what are you thinking right now if you're committed to Miami and you're just like,
Run.
wow, what the hell just happened?
So we go, and we talked about Will Norman. We go and get Jordan Castell, safety out of Winter Garden. What's your feelings on him?
Jordan Castell, he's interesting. I haven't really watched a lot of film on Castell, but I've heard a lot of great things about Jordan Castell as a safety. I talked to a lot of these guys like Zach Goodall and Connor Clark and a lot of these, Corey Bennett, a lot of these guys that keep up with a lot of these recruits. And they've had really good things to say about Jordan Castell. I mean, the thing I like about this recruiting class is a lot of these commits that were committed early to Florida, they've all risen in their rankings. So that just, as I said, it goes to show you that when a staff sees talent, they see it. You always want to bring in kids that gradually climb in their ranking as they they get older and they develop and get to their senior year and all that. And this is the same case with Jordan Castell. I mean, he's ranked 387th. He got down to the 400s, and now he's all the way up to 203 towards the end of the cycle. So sometimes it's a growth spurt. Some of these kids, they get bigger, stronger, and faster as their senior years go on. And some of them just improve. And some of them just have talent, and it hasn't been seen yet. And I think Jordan Castell is one of those guys as well that we talk about that, wasn't high on the boards for some schools at the beginning, and then gradually just climbed in his recruiting rank. I think he's a 92 average right now. And I say this too, as a recruiting class, you want to be at like 93 for a player average, but 92 is good enough to compete with some of the top teams in the nation. And he's right at that 92 range. It just goes to show you that, further development and all that, he could be an impact player for Florida coming down the stretch.
And we not to beat a dead horse, but we keep saying the same thing. And it's these kids, a lot of them have just shot through the rankings.
Yeah.
And that's why I'm saying that, Billy Napier and company, they're getting these kids early. They're getting these kids before anybody is offering them, it seems like. And, when you get a kid like Jakeem Jackson and everybody finds out and everybody's off, starts offering him, I think it means something to these kids when you're the first one.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, Jakeem Jackson's a blazer, dude. Like, he is fast. He could probably play receiver. He could play corner. He could probably play any position you want him to play on the field that involves any kind of sort of speed. But, yeah, I mean, it does mean a lot. You go to, and I hate to give Dan Mullen credit, but you go back to, I think it's like the 2020 class. We didn't get him anyway. Isaiah Bond. He was ranked like 400 or 300. I did a video on him when I was back at Chomp Talk, and I said, hold the brakes, man. This kid's really fast. I think he ran like a 10.2 100 meter or 10.3, something like that, track star fast. Wound up at the end of the class being in the top 50, the number one athlete in the class. Of course, Dan Mullen gets fired. He goes to Alabama. But, I mean, that was an elite talent that Dan Mullen saw early, offered him, and he committed. I'm pretty sure, I can't say that Isaiah Bond would have stayed in that class, but I'm pretty sure he would have, just based on the fact Dan Mullen offered him early, saw him early. And if he was still head coach, he could still be part of Florida. But I know that he was visiting Alabama pretty often, ever so often towards the end of that cycle. So who knows what would have happened? Maybe Isaiah Bond still would have went to Alabama if Dan Mullen was still coach. But I would rather take the loss of Isaiah Bond and get Billy Napier than keep Dan Mullen and keep Isaiah Bond in the class. So
most definitely. So you go out to Jacksonville, close proximity, and you get Sharif Denson. Again, a kid that it was not highly regarded, but from everything I'm hearing is just kind of that dog mentality. He thinks he's the best corner in the class. Kind of a slot corner, I'd say, type.
Yeah. Yeah, Sharif Denson, I actually, as far as like attitude wise, playing the game, I think he's been pretty solid. He was, I think he was ranked in the top 150 at one point, 160, kind of went down in the rankings. I don't really know the situation with that, But still, an elite corner in the class. I still like the talent that he brings for the University of Florida. And you look at just the class in general of cornerbacks. I mean, these guys, Jakeem Jackson, top 50, Sharif Denson in the top 250. You've got good corners. Like, you've got corners that can play, or that are SEC caliber guys. I mean, not one of these corners was outside of the top 250 that Florida brought in. And of course, as I said, you miss on Cormani McClain. He goes to Miami, then goes to Colorado, lies to a whole bunch of schools. I don't know why he did all that, but you couldn't get AJ Harris. He went to Georgia, but you're looking at it and you're like, man, we couldn't get an elite corner. And then Jakeem Jackson shoots up in the rankings. Sharif Denson stays pretty much where he's at in that top 250. But I mean, you think that your corners weren't that great, I guess, recruiting wise. And then you see Jakeem Jackson shoot up. You see Sharif Denson stay where he's at. And, you bring in these top 250 guys and some of these top 50 guys, and the top 50 guys are probably more ready to play than the top 250. But, you get top 250 guys, maybe by year 1 or year 2, they could be pretty solid for you in the class. I'm not saying that all these guys are going to go to the NFL or anything like that, but, Sharif Denson, coming in and being that second corner of this class, I mean, that's a good 1-2 punch, especially when you got Jakeem Jackson there in the fold.
Most definitely. And then you go out and get TJ Searcy.
Yep.
6'5", 250. Is he going to be a linebacker, or is he a true D lineman?
I've heard that he could possibly play both, but I don't know what the staff really would want him to play. That's actually a question that I would probably have to ask Zach or somebody like that. But TJ Searcy. I mean, this is the cool thing about these recruits too. Is if he does play linebacker, you might as well throw his ranking out the window, because I mean, they're ranking him as a defensive lineman in this class. So you don't know, and that's another thing that I try to tell people is, if you recruit somebody that's outside of the top 250 or 300 and they want them to play a different position, we don't even know what we're getting out of them, because they're playing a completely different position. So that's just a mystery box from there. But I do like his get off speed. Like, TJ Searcy has a lot of good get off speed from the jump. Like, right as he jumps, he's off to the races. I do like the acceleration he has as a defensive lineman, getting to the quarterback and getting pressure. We'll see, though. I mean, he's got the speed to play linebacker too. I mean, he's already 250 pounds. I mean, so he's right there at the exact size that you want somebody at for a linebacker in college. So that'll be interesting, man. I do not know. I actually will have to ask around about that, but I'm pretty sure they do want him playing defensive lineman, but I wouldn't be shocked if you seen him at linebacker either.
Yeah, that's kind of like the Jack Pyburn of this year. He kind of did it all for that defense. Played edge, played linebacker, just a ferocious hitter.
Yeah, and I think you could see him on the edge too. That just depends on how he develops in practice and where the coaching staff sees him at, to be honest.
So you go get Aaron Gates, athlete. What position do you think he'll play?
That is interesting. I mean, that was the longest tenured recruit. I think he committed to Dan Mullen.
Really?
Into the class. Yeah, let's look. I know he committed back a long time ago. Let's see. So he visited Florida in 2002, July 29th. So he committed August 26th, 2021.
Wow.
So yeah, I knew he was been committed for a long time. I just couldn't really get the exact date there. But that's a mystery box there, man. I don't know what the staff has told him about playing at the University of Florida, but obviously Dan Mullen saw some talent in this kid, and now Billy Napier and staff wanted to keep this kid as well. And he's in the class. He's ranked nationally at 334, but one of the more silent guys of this recruiting class. You don't really hear a lot from Aaron Gates.
Yeah, I forget about him.
Yeah, I do too. Like, I honestly do too. I mean, Aaron Gates is it's a mystery box where they want to put him. I know we need kickoff returners, so maybe they put him back there, or maybe they give it to that running back from Tulane. I don't know, man. Aaron Gates has been a whole complete mystery box of a recruit in this class, and I know Dan Mullen and staff, I think, maybe wanted him at receiver. I can't remember. But I don't know. I don't know where the staff sees Aaron Gates at. But I mean, 6'1", 195 pounds. He has some speed to athleticism. We'll just have to see, man. I mean, he can play both sides of the football.
Most definitely. And then you go out and you get a guy that's really the glue to this class, I think, and that's Trayon Webb.
Oh yeah. Dude, I love Trayon Webb. I've talked to him in some Twitter spaces. He's very vocal, and what I like about Trayon Webb is he's not afraid to say what's on his mind. He's kind of like he kind of reminds me a little bit of Shamar James, but Shamar James is more of like a funny joke personality. More than anything else, he's like that. When Bill Murray shows up at a random wedding, Shamar James is that type of guy. He'll do something funny just randomly. No, Trayon Webb is one of the more vocal guys of the class. I know. His national ranking was, I believe, at 150, and he dropped to 336. Never lost production, to be honest with you. So I don't even know why I kind of know why he dropped 150 spots. He was very vocal on a Twitter space one time, and he was saying that he lied to a lot of people and told them he's going to Penn State. So they crystal balled him to Penn State, and he came to Florida. And he thought it was funny, so maybe he just made him mad, and they dropped his ranking. I fully believe that, but I mean, this guy, he was the number 5 running back in this class before all that happened. The number 5 running back, I believe, in the state of Florida. My bad. And number 6, I think he was the number 6 overall running back. But anyway, I mean, like speed, Trinity Christian, phenomenal high school. I've interviewed a lot of kids from that school. Colin Hurley, who's currently committed to LSU, he played with him as well. But Trayon Webb, I liked what I saw at the Under Armour All-American game too. He's got speed. I like his vision. So he sees, and Dameon Pierce was really good with this too, seeing the holes open before they open. And Dameon Pierce was more of your power back. Obviously, it took a lot of people to take him down, and that's what made Dameon Pierce really special. Only 6 carries a game. But Trayon Webb is same way, same kind of vision, a little bit more speed than he does have power, but really, I think a very underrated running back, considering his national ranking now, of course, how it tanked. I don't know. As I said, I have no earthly idea why he tanked, because he never lost any production, and he was sharing carries at running back or at Trinity Christian, still rushed well over 1,000 yards. So definitely an underrated running back in this class. Of course, you adding that with the weapons that you got now at running back, I think the future's bright at running back for the
looking healthy under Billy Napier and company.
Yeah,
yeah. Then you go out and you get Andy Jean right out of Miami's backyard. He's out of Northwestern, home of Amari Cooper, another great wide receiver from that area.
Yep.
And Amari Cooper gets on. I don't know if it's Twitter Live or whatever, and says, "Hey, go to Florida." Basically, we got the speed coach that trained him for the combine. Tiger, I don't know his last name, and says, "Hey, that Florida's where it's at."
Yeah, whenever you get an endorsement from Amari Cooper, that pretty much means you're a pretty solid receiver, I would say. As we were talking before, man, I mean, Eugene Wilson, Aiden Mazzell, Andy Jean, combined, all 3 speed. That's what you want at wide receiver coming to the University of Florida. And Andy Jean adds that size as well. I believe he had posted something on Twitter that he's at 200 pounds now. And there was a rumor going around that he ran at like 22.5 miles per hour on top of that. So anytime you can get a 200-pound receiver running 22.5 miles per hour, and that's kind of around where I believe Anthony Richardson ran on one of his runs earlier this year. I think it was like 21, close to 22. So he's faster than Anthony Richardson. So, I mean, combine that with 200 pounds, obviously, got to be able to catch a football, but he's shown that he can do that too as well, along with the other wide receivers. So this is one of the main positions I'm excited for, is wide receiver coming into the University of Florida. I mean, these guys, they might be freshmen, but I could see any of them playing right away.
Yeah, and that wide receiver cornerback position, those are 2 positions on a field you can, as a freshman, you can step in and we see it every year. You can make something of yourself. And truthfully, Andy Jean, not known as a speedster. Nobody talks about his speed. It's highly underrated. He is known as a route guy. He does all the routes right. And that just tells you that the guy works. If you are mastering routes, you're putting the time in. That's not a talent.
Oh yeah. Yeah. And he's been up against some of the best teams in high school. He put up over 100 yards on IMG. Miami Central. I mean, you name it. He's done a lot of, I mean, just phenomenal things just in high school. And it's kind of like the Kadarius Toney sort of situation. Like Kadarius Toney coming out of high school wasn't really rated really high, but then you turn on the film and you watch it, and when he was playing at Alabama, I was just like, holy crap, this kid, he's really good. I don't know how he's like rated so low. And usually some of these prospects, the reason why they're rated low is either they don't attend a lot of camps or they just don't have the size. Like I think Kadarius Toney was a little bit shorter. I think 160, 170 coming out of high school. So they rated him as a 3-star. Now, of course, if he was 200 pounds solid muscle, he'd probably be like a 4-star somewhere in there. But you see the talent. Like when you look at the film, you see the talent. And I said, man, this kid's like, he reminded me of Michael Vick because he was playing quarterback in high school. And I was just like, holy crap. And I remember when Luke Del Rio and all those other quarterbacks were struggling, Austin Appleby, me and Will Miles were like, dude, Kadarius Toney, put him in.
Put him
what he
in.
can do. I mean, the guy throws what, a 50, 60-yard ball just sitting down on turf.
Yeah.
Why don't we just try Kadarius Toney out, man, and see what he can do? So I think Andy Jean's kind of one of those guys that you turn on the film, you see his ranking, and you're like, man, how is he only 377? So yeah, as I said, the wide receiver core that we got coming into Florida, I'm very, very pumped and excited about.
So then you go out and you get a kid from Georgia, your neck of the woods.
Yep.
Bryce Thornton.
Yeah, Bryce Thornton. I tried to interview him actually before he enrolled at the University of Florida. Unfortunately, after they enroll at the University of Florida and they're a freshman, I have to get Rick Hurtado's permission to interview them because they don't like freshmen being interviewed. So,
yeah, understandable.
Yeah, which is understandable. Yeah, I talked to him on the phone about that because when I had on Hayden Hansen because he does work with Locked On Gators. And I asked him if he'd like to come on the show. He did. And then Trevor Etienne made a little appearance because he was walking through the dorm. And I got a call from him and he's like, hey, man, and he was really nice. Like, he was really nice. He said, just make sure, he goes, you can keep the interview up or whatever. He's like, just make sure if you want to interview a freshman, try to get past me first. So
I can only imagine PR nightmare, possibly.
Yeah. So I was supposed to interview him, and then he enrolled, and I was just like, I'll wait a year. But yeah, Milton High School. I mean, this place pumps out talent. I mean, I believe Tyron Hopper was from Milton as well, or I believed he played. No, I think it was Roswell High School he played at. But Milton. I mean, every time I pick up a local newspaper, Milton High School's in there. I mean, they pump out a lot of talent there in Alpharetta. Very wealthy part of Georgia too, Alpharetta, Georgia, and coming over there. But man, Bryce Thornton, maybe an underrated safety in this class. I'm not sure, but I like what I've seen from him on film. I like his attitude. He's got like the perfect attitude for football. And Billy Napier, what I like about what he's done too is he's not trying to recruit. Of course, he went after Cormani McClain, and then Cormani McClain did the Miami thing. I know for a fact, and a lot of Miami fans gave me crap. He tried calling Florida back, and we said no. So yeah. That's why he went to Colorado. But, I told a lot of Miami fans to say, hey, Cormani's not staying in your class. And they gave me crap. And I'm like, all right, whatever. But, Billy Napier targets kids with the right attitude as well. You got to think he's trying to change the culture as well. Dan Mullen did not instill a good culture at the University of Florida when he was here at coach. And I know a lot of kids love Dan Mullen. And I'm not going after the kids. And I'm not saying that Dan Mullen was a bad guy or bad whatever, but he did teach bad habits apparently because you saw it on Twitter. But he targets these type of kids, and with Bryce Thornton, I think he needs a little bit more development as far as safety goes. But I think as far as development and getting there to the next level, maybe year 2, year 3, you probably see him starting at safety somewhere.
Yeah, most definitely. And we've been on 53 minutes, guys. So I don't want to take up too much of David's time.
It's all good.
So we'll kind of get through the rest of this real fast. So you go out, you get your single linebacker, Jaden Robinson, out of Lake City, another kid that kind of went up through the rankings.
Yeah, he was offered by a lot of schools too. South Carolina was really on him too as well. But this is a guy, I mean, as I said, another underrated talent. I feel like I would say probably needs a little bit more development as to a lot of these kids. Obviously, a lot of kids can't come in and start as freshmen. So that's not me saying that he sucks or anything like that. But you see the talent in Jaden Robinson. I mean, you see his vision. You see how he comes off. He gets to get off on the ball. and I think his vision is a lot. I think he's more of the better coverage linebacker of this class, if that makes any sense. But as far as teaching him something like Ventrell Miller stage, we'll have to see if he gets there. As far as that though, I believe the vision is there. I think as far as getting pressure on the quarterback or some the other things that linebackers do as far as like edge guys, I think that needs to be a little bit more further developed. But other than that, I think he's got the all around talent to be a good linebacker.
Then you get a pair of offensive linemen, Najee Harris out of IMG again, and Bryce Lovett.
Size, baby. That's what I like. Najee Harris, IMG Academy guy. Any kid that's played at IMG Academy,
center, right? He played center.
Yeah. So any kid that you can get from IMG Academy, they pump out talent. I mean, that is a football first school, education last school, football first. If you've ever been to IMG Academy, it looks like a college campus. It's crazy how immaculate IMG Academy looks. But anytime you can get a talent from IMG Academy, I mean, 6'3", 335 coming out of high school. Bryce Lovett, another guy, 6'5", 330. I mean, that size, you can't teach size. All you got to do is teach them better fundamentals, maybe that they've learned in high school, and how you want to operate your system. I mean, these guys, I love the size that we're bringing in. It's not like John Heves or Coach Hevesy size that he's bringing in. I mean, these guys are well over 300 pounds, and that's what you want on your offensive line. I mean, this is the SEC. I mean, these guys that you're lining up against, these defensive linemen, they're close. Some of them close to 300. Some of them are 280, 290, 250. I mean, you're going to need size to protect that quarterback. And I like the size, just basically what they're bringing in. And I think both these guys have the potential to be good all-around offensive linemen.
And then you go out and you obviously we talked a little bit about Eugene Wilson. Just a kind of a Tony S type of kid, 5'11", 165, speed for days.
Yep.
Like David said, if you didn't see that video, what he posted, go check that thing out.
It's insane.
My knees hurt. My knees hurt seeing that.
I'll tell you this, Kadarius Toney was really good with his hips and really good with his cuts, and he was very, very hard to tackle because of that. And you get kind of the same vibe from Eugene Wilson. Maybe not quite the hips that Kadarius Toney has, but just look at the acceleration coming out of his cuts. It's insane to watch just on film. That's a slot wide receiver, a defensive guy's nightmare.
Yeah, and he gets to go and learn behind a true pro of the game, I feel like, in Ricky Pearsall. And so that's really going to help him out a lot. Then kind of a guy that we talked these recruiting sites almost messed it up for us. Dijon Johnson. Yeah, it says safety here. I think he's going to be a corner.
Yeah, I think he announced his commitment like 3 times last year.
Yeah.
Yeah, Dijon Johnson, man, getting him from Ohio State, too, having him flip there. I don't think that we've ever flipped an Ohio State player in a long time. And Ohio State recruits elite every year. I know a lot of Ohio State fans were upset that we were able to flip Dijon Johnson, but yeah, I mean, the safety position and the corner position has been anything defense has been pretty bad recently as of late in Florida. And I think Billy Napier and staff really knew that, especially with the tutelage of Corey Raymond there too, putting all these guys in the NFL. Dijon Johnson, a guy that's floated around in that top 100, just a good all-around talent. I mean, I can't say that he could start immediately, but give him a year or so. I could see Dijon Johnson definitely playing in a Florida Gator uniform and starting for the team.
All right, and then we go and we get let's see, we got a guy right there in Gainesville, Gavin Hill.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, another guy, 6'3", 255, ranked 300th nationally. I don't know too much on Gavin Hill, but I know the staff was very high on him from the get-go, from the beginning. I mean, this guy, as I said, floating into that top 250. Anytime you can get a guy that's either inside of the top 250 or floats around there, they have the potential to be there. Of course, maybe need a little bit more development down the road. But I mean, we've seen a lot of guys that were ranked nationally 400, 300 going to the NFL. I mean, it happens. I'm not going to say he's going to be an NFL talent or anything. I'm not trying to blow smoke, but a guy that's in Gainesville. Of course, you want to get the guys that are in Gainesville. Anthony Richardson was a Gainesville guy as well. You never want to lose those battles. I mean, they're right in your territory. They're right down the road. And if you can find a top 250 or top 300 talent right down the road from you, that's a pretty easy sell. So getting Gavin Hill in this class, especially with the defensive line losing all the people that it's going to lose, another feather in your cap there for Billy Napier and staff.
All right, we're going to take a brief intermission real fast. Got to plug my phone in. So
losing some juice there.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I have that issue a lot with some of the notifications I get. I have to turn off some notifications too, but this class, I mean, when you look at it, 20 commits, it doesn't jump out to you. It's like ranked 14th or something, but I mean, there is a lot of talent in this class. I think that a lot of Florida Gator fans don't see. As I said, I'm not blowing smoke. I'm not going to say if they're going to make it to the NFL or anything like that, but I think Billy Napier and staff did a good job of quality over quantity. I mean, Billy Napier and staff could have took 3 or 4 more 3-stars and then been in the top 10 easy, but they didn't do that. What I like about them is they're not going to take kids just for fluff, just to fill up spaces. They're going to do their research, and Dan Mullen did it with his classes. I mean, he would take guys that he knew either weren't going to qualify, or he would go to the transfer portal to plug holes. And of course, the coaching staff had to do that this year because 20 players plus left the University of Florida. So you have to go in the transfer portal to get guys. And I think they did an okay job in the portal. I think there was some guys that they should have took that some other schools got. But for the most part, offensive line-wise, I loved what they did in the portal. Linebacker, we'll have to see where Taraja Mitchell winds up. Deuce Spurlock, obviously a guy that's got experience. We'll have to see how those guys shake up. But as far as like the Graham Mertz thing, as I said, I did some research on him. May not be as bad as we think, but at the same time, I'm holding out hope that I am right with thinking that he may not be as bad as he seems. But at the same time, I'm also kind of like, are we going to get the same stuff that we got at Wisconsin? The touchdown to interception ratio doesn't look that well. But as I said, with a new offensive line, if they are good, we got to see if they are good and they can get some push, which I think they will. With a new offensive line and receivers, we will see how some of these transfers come into the University of Florida and how they perform.
Yeah, one of my favorite kids transfer-wise was Raul Nunnery. I think he was a special teams player of the year.
A lot of accolades for him.
just a guy that with the special teams that we was terrible this year. A guy that just I think can come in and show the guys, look, you can make something of yourself on the special teams, kind of give them a boost or a bump. I like the kid a lot.
Yeah, I do too. I think he has the record for most block punts or block kicks, or I think he set a record somewhere at the University of Houston. As far as like special teams has not been special at Florida for a while. I mean, ever since Urban Meyer left, you had with Will Muschamp, you had some special teams. Andre DeBose. You think about all the other guys that were returning kicks, Antonio Callaway. I mean, ever since then, you really haven't had a special kickoff returner, punt returner, somebody to block a kick. No speed whatsoever. And that's not me bashing Xavier Henderson. I think Xavier Henderson's a better receiver than he is returner. Xavier Henderson's acceleration is not great, but I think as far as him running routes, being in the slot sometimes, I think he's a way better route runner, way better catcher. I think he's best at wide receiver, and you just leave him there. But you need somebody with speed. You need somebody that can do something special on special teams. I mean, if you look back last year, we call them game changers. The special teams changed the game the wrong negative way for us all last year. Missing kicks, getting them blocked. I mean, you look at the special teams blunders we had all year. That's definitely a key target that, we obviously need to key in on. And I think getting him into the class will help a little bit with that.
Yeah, most definitely. Just kind of disappointing with the special teams. But like I said, hopefully he comes in kind of a spark plug. And then we go out and we get some beef. We get Cameron Jackson, and we get Caleb Banks.
Yeah. Caleb Banks played over there at Louisville, but I love Cameron Jackson. I love what I've seen on film from him at his time at Memphis. I mean, this guy is he's going to be starting next year. I know that for a fact. But this was one of the better portal pickups that I liked. I mean, this guy is probably close to 300 pounds now. But Cameron Jackson, all you got to do, go to YouTube, type in Cameron Jackson highlights, and then just watch the film. I mean, this kid's good. So definitely a good replacement for some of those guys that left on the defensive line. I really love this pickup out of the portal. It's kind of one of my favorite pickups, along with Keontae Goodwin. But other than that, man, I think you're. I'm not going to say solid at defensive line, but I think you improved your defensive line getting Cameron Jackson and Caleb Banks there in the fold.
And a position that we have just missed, whiffed, not recruited well is that interior. I mean, minus Gervon.
Yeah, defensive
who was
tackle
the last
is
good one?
Yeah, Gervon and Gervon didn't even really have his best year last year. He was out there a lot though. A lot of players get winded, and that's understandable. I mean, if you go back and look at the bowl game, I think it was Princely Uman or Kingsley Eaglecon on a play, and they were just gassed. I mean, you had nobody. I mean, and a lot of people were like, "Oh, look at the effort," and I'm like, "Dude, the guy's been out there for like 60 plays. He's tired, man."
Yeah.
And we didn't have anybody in that bowl game, and the depth really showed against Oregon State. That what Dan Mullen left us with, and I think, as I said, getting some of these guys in from the transfer portal, some of them are names that may not be well known, and probably maybe you're just taking him for depth reasons. But a lot of these guys, I mean, especially at linebacker, we don't know what we're going to get out of these two transfers from at linebacker. We don't know what we're going to get out of Caleb Banks, but we know what we're getting out of Cameron Jackson. We know what we could get with Keontae Goodwin. We know what we can get with Cameron Carroll. And we know what we're going to get with Micah Mazuka. So some of these guys, like, we've seen film and we know what we're going to get out of them. And we know that they're going to be instant impact players. And some of these guys, it's just a mystery. We don't know what we're going to get out of them. But I think they did a pretty solid job there, defensive line wise. I would have liked to have seen more, but we don't. I mean, spring portal period is coming up too, so we'll have to see what they do with that.
We also didn't know that any of the players were going to be any good coming from Louisiana. I mean, there was questions that even Torrance. Oh well, he played lesser guys. When he gets to the big bad SEC. He's not. It's just
Still
not going to be
everybody.
Yeah. Look at him now.
Yeah, he's flying up draft boards right now. He had a really good Senior Bowl too. I think just based on the transfers that Billy Napier brought in last year, and then how they performed this year, really gives me confidence in the evaluation of Billy Napier and staff, and gives me confidence that a lot of these guys they got out of the portal could be instant impact guys coming in. I do like as I said, Taraja Mitchell. He's been hurt. He was at Ohio State. I mean, he was a top 50 linebacker. I think he was the number 2 linebacker in his class. Mm-hmm. I mean, that's pretty much almost 5-star potential. Obviously, the staff saw something in him, so he comes in. He brings a leadership role as well. He's a lot older. And Deuce Spurlock. I mean, I as you said, the special teams and everything else, but we don't know necessarily what we're going to get out of him. But I mean, you see film, you see something from these guys. So I think that, as I said, Billy Napier and staff, how they evaluate transfers and how they evaluate talent. As you said, you look at last year, the best players on the team. It really gives me confidence that these guys that they brought in, they know what they're doing with them when they get to campus.
Well, and you talk about Mitchell, the guy gets hurt, and he especially at a place like Ohio State where there are guys ready, willing to step in. It's dog eat dog at that college. You're a team, but when it becomes getting my reps and getting to the NFL, so you get kind of lost in the shuffle.
Yep.
He said he had some family issues that he just really wasn't loving football anymore. Needed a good change of scenery. So I'm hoping the best for him. We broke down the roster. Let's get into the schedule real fast. Utah, what are you thinking at Utah?
That's going to be a tough one, man. I really want to give Florida the W, but it is away, and everybody's returning for Utah.
Yeah, at elevation.
Yeah, and you look at Utah last year, their defense wasn't really that good, but their tight ends, man, were killing Florida.
Yeah.
and a lot of those guys are coming back too. So I want to say W. I have to give it an L just because it's away. New quarterback, don't know what we're getting from him, but we didn't know what we were getting from Anthony Richardson too, because he rarely ever started a game the year before. I think this game's going to be on Graham Mertz and his talent and what he can do. As far as the running game, I think we'll be able to run the football against Utah, but I can't see it as a win right now. But talk to me after I've seen some spring practice, and maybe I might change this. I think it's going to be close, but I'm not sure if Florida can pull out the W right now.
Then we got McNeese State at home.
That's a W.
Tennessee at home.
That's going to be a tough one there. I think Florida. I think I could give Florida the W here just based on Tennessee's defense. Losing
And Tennessee will Tennessee.
Hooker. Yeah, they could Tennessee too. And losing Hooker, I did like what I saw from Milton though in the bowl game against Clemson. Clemson was playing with a freshman quarterback though too. Kind of kept that game a little bit close there, but Tennessee was able to pull it off there towards the end. I think Florida can win this game. I think Florida can get the W, especially with it being at home in Gainesville.
We got Charlotte at home after that.
That's a W.
And then we got Kentucky at Kentucky, close to me. I might go to that game. I went to the Kentucky game last year. Personally, I just want to see a win because it was a long 16-hour drive back in silence.
Oh. Yeah, I'm going to say should be a W. We'll put that out there. Should be a W. I think Florida can win that football game, especially with Levis going to the NFL. And, Kentucky is we could have beat Kentucky last year with decent quarterback play. It's taken a lot for Kentucky to beat us, a lot of mishaps on special teams, a lot of crazy crap just for them to even get in a close game with us. So, as I said, it should be a W. Play average quarterback play decent defense, and run the football, and you probably beat Kentucky.
Yeah, I'm not saying no knock on Mark Stoops. I think he's done incredible things with that program.
Oh, yeah.
I think he's topped out there. I think he goes somewhere else, a bigger program. And that's not a firing of him getting fired by Kentucky, but I think he just sees, look, this is the peak of what I can do here. I got to go somewhere with more money that takes football seriously. And I think he goes somewhere else soon. So they've kind of peaked, I think. Obviously, no Will Levis.
Yeah, and that's not me bashing Kentucky. I mean, just look at last year. Look what they did. I mean, they played Georgia and lost 16-6. I mean, that was a 10-point game against the team that won the national championship and blew out TCU.
Oh yeah, that was terrible.
And had a close one with Ohio State. But I mean, the things that Stoops has done at Kentucky is phenomenal. But as you said, I think he's capped out where he can go. But as I said, Florida should win the football game.
Vanderbilt.
Play
at
good
home.
special teams.
Huh?
Said play good special teams.
Boy, if I'm telling you this, and I made a video about this, if he loses to Vandy at home, they will come out with pitchforks.
Yeah, you got to win this one. I'm putting it as a W because we should have won last year. We should win anytime we play Vanderbilt. So I will put it as a W. I will mark it down as a W. But man, yeah.
And we take shots at Vandy. Vandy is not the Vandy of the old. They are on the incline.
Yeah, they've improved. They've sort of been like Kentucky. Like Kentucky could never get over the beat Florida hump, and now they're starting to beat Florida. Vanderbilt, they've gotten better. I think, weren't they in a? No, that was Missouri, and they were close to getting in an SEC championship one year, I believe. I think it was 2013, I believe. They were pretty good. Almost got to an SEC championship. But yeah, I mean, Vanderbilt's improved, but they're still not on Florida's level. I mean, you look at last year's game, it took Florida, 20 mistakes for Vanderbilt just to barely beat them?
Yeah.
So, I mean, if you play good special teams and you don't make mistakes, I mean, you easily beat Vanderbilt.
Yep. Then it's South Carolina at South Carolina. And before you take this, I got to say this. That rooster, gamecock, cockle-doo-doo-doo they play over the loudspeaker it's deafening, it's ear bleeding. It is the worst noise in college football. It's worse than the FSU chant. It's worse than the cowbells at Mississippi State. It is the worst noise in the world.
Yeah, and I've heard that they've had some of the worst fans in the world too. I've had, I think, 3 or 4 guys go to a game at South Carolina when Florida's playing South Carolina, and people were trying to either start fights with them, throw trash at them, Yeah, it was bad. And I've heard Tennessee fans were pretty bad, but I've heard South Carolina fans were like the worst to ever go to a game to. And
Y- You,
I think it's interesting though too. I think Beamer's done a good job recruiting for South Carolina. I
mhm.
mean, South Carolina, if you look at them last year, they really came on. I mean, blowing out Tennessee, beating Clemson. Um, they've been very up and down. They haven't been consistent. I think they found their consistency towards the end of the year. I think that's going to be a good one there in South Carolina and Columbia. I can't necessarily say Florida's going to win that game, but I can't say that they're going to lose it either. I mean, look at the matchup last year. You're pretty much, I mean, I hate going by last year all the time, but I think if Florida can do the same thing that they did to South Carolina, play some decent defense, run the football down their throat, I think they win the game. But at the same time, man, South Carolina, as I said, Spencer Rattler, they came on pretty late in the season. Really don't know what you're going to get from South Carolina. So that's kind of a question mark. I want to say Florida's going to get a W, but I might just have a neutral question mark for that game.
Yeah, and South Carolina kind of just like Florida, up and down last year. You didn't know what
Yep.
team you were going to get. They go out. I think it was Clemson. They play the last game of the season, and they demolished them. And then you get I have circled this slate right here. This 3-game grinder. Supposedly we're getting a bye, and then you get Georgia. Now you have Georgia, Arkansas, LSU. Then you have to go to Mizzou. It's going to be a noon game. It's going to be cold. Nobody likes Missouri. They call it Mizzou because they don't want people to know the secret that it is just a miserable place there. So you got Georgia. I don't say you have to win Georgia. I'm saying you got to keep it within a touchdown.
Yeah. Yeah, I can't pick a win against Georgia right now just based on the recruiting and talent that they have. Obviously, Stetson Bennett won't be there. I do like what I've seen from Beck, though. I think Beck's a pretty solid quarterback, too. You still got those tight ends coming back. I mean, that's just going to be too tough. I have it as an L. Of course, I love to win that game every year because I live in the state of Georgia, and I don't like the barking. I don't like the 2 national championships in a row. But I have to say an L here until I see otherwise.
Yeah, and I call him Dr. Bennett on this podcast because he was there for 6 years like Tommy Boy.
Yeah.
Arkansas, tough team, goes into it's at the Swamp, but just a team that's gonna grind you. It's just a
Yep.
grinder of a game, and you're beat up from Georgia. If you're gonna have an injury or two on from Georgia, that. Then you got to go back home, and you just got to play a team that's gonna try to run it down your throat in Arkansas.
Yeah, I think that's going to be very heavy run. That'll probably be a low scoring game just based on the fact that both teams are trying to run the football. That's a tough one too, man. I think I'm going to put on my orange and blue glasses and say W, just because it's at home. I always, if we're at home, I always just give ourselves the W. But
Yeah.
if it's a close game, but yeah, I'll say a close W, but could also be an L too. But I'll pick W for Florida.
Then we got LSU at LSU, and let me tell you something. We
Oh
know it's going
man,
to be a night game.
yeah,
LSU has had our number for years for some reason. It's the only team that can come in and not had a back rush for 100 yards all year and then come in and run for 300,
yeah,
or a quarterback not throw a touchdown all year and then come out and light it up like a Heisman candidate, or the wide receiver core was terrible and they come out and look like a all pro. LSU, tough game. And let me tell you, if there is a place that is as loud as the Swamp, it is a night game in Baton Rouge. You get those drunk Cajuns in there, the music's flowing, the liquor's flowing, and they are just absolutely going nuts for their Tigers. Tough game. What do you think?
I think Florida will be able to score points against LSU, but I can't see Florida beating LSU right now, just based talent wise across the board. LSU's always had our number for some reason. I used to call them Lucky State University because they would always find a way to beat us somehow. Florida, they can't get the LSU monkey off their back, man. I can't give them a W right now, but please, please prove me wrong in Baton Rouge.
Yes, I agree. My parents live down there in Louisiana. My stepmom is a alum there. Her family are all alums, and so I send her Gator stuff all week long. And then I had to eat crow last year. It was terrible.
Yeah,
Like
it
we
was
said,
bad. I went to that
Missouri
game.
at noon. Missouri. It's going to be cold. You just went through that grinder of South Carolina, Georgia, Arkansas, LSU. You're treading water. You got guys banged up. You're just a team that we don't ever play well. What are you thinking?
I think Florida could pull it off. I'll give them the W in Missouri. I think Florida just has the better all-around team than Missouri does. Of course, Missouri's added some good pieces there. I mean, Tyron Hopper was a linebacker that I wanted to see start for Florida for a long time. They get him from the transfer portal. So they've acquired some talent over there at Missouri. They did pretty well in the portal. If you were to ask me, if you had $1,000 to bet on the game, who would you bet on? I would bet on Florida to win the football game. So I'll have to give it a W.
They did lose their wide receiver to the transfer portal.
Yep.
Their main stud there. And then the game that never seems to disappoint, except for the Dalvin Cook era. Florida State, it's a game I like on a cold day. I get a bowl of chili, nothing to do at the house, and I'll put on an old YouTube video of Florida State. You have Damian Pierce 2 years ago run into the end zone without his helmet after Mullen getting fired. Last year, we have the thriller, a missed call at the end, of face mask. So the bad guys won this year. Now, this is not a Florida State team of the old. This team is loaded.
I'm in the portal too.
I'm the portal king in Norvell. He does it in the portal. They're doing it unconventionally. Everybody's saying you got to have a top 5 class to win a national championship. We'll see this year if that stays true with Florida State. They're going to be a dang good team. They can still lose to Florida and make the playoffs. They're playing in the ACC. Miami ain't going to beat them. We know that. So what are you thinking about Florida State?
Oh, man. It took a lot for Florida State to get the victory last year. I believe if Florida would have just kept running the ball in the third quarter, they would have won. I don't know why they got pass happy. I mean, they were killing them on the ground in that game. I think if Florida stuck with the run game last year in the third quarter, they pull off that victory. But, I mean, this isn't last year's team. Jordan Travis, I actually like as a quarterback. I've actually heard him on a Twitter space, too. I think he's a really good kid, solid quarterback. They're returning a lot of talent. A lot of talent's coming in from the transfer portal. I want to say W, but I just can't right now imagine Florida beating Florida State just based on the talent that they brought in and Jordan Travis returning. Because Jordan Travis, I mean, freshman year, sophomore year may not have been the best quarterback, but he's really grown into his role junior, senior year. I mean, he's been playing pretty lights out. Still makes some mistakes every now and then, but really has put it on. We'll see. I mean, they got to play LSU, so we'll see how good they are.
But they get them early,
and they get them early. So maybe they find out, even if they lose to LSU, if they find out their bugaboos from the rest of the year and rest of the season, could give Florida a tough matchup. As I said, right now I can't say W just based on the talent they're bringing in and who they're returning, but trust me, I really want Florida to win that football game, especially in Gainesville. So,
and I will say this: I've only seen this a couple times. And you can tell me if I'm way off here. I actually want your opinion. In that Florida State game, Jordan Travis, we were hitting him, but we couldn't. There was guys hanging off of him. It was Mike Vick-esque.
Yeah, that play.
They dipped him in baby oil.
Yeah, it was third down, I believe, and they were in the end zone, and like 4 guys were on top of him, and not one of them could tackle him. And that was the most frustrating thing to see because they scored. So you're like, that could have took away a touchdown from them, and probably even took away 3 points if they don't make the field goal. But yeah, something like that was struggling. It just really I was so angry. I was so irritated seeing that. But I goes to show you, man, just how plays can develop. I mean, you think you got a quarterback stacked and he can brush his way out of it. I mean, Kadarius Toney was good at that. Kadarius Toney, for a small guy, pretty hard to tackle when you got on top of him. I mean, he had strong legs too. So yeah, man, that game was frustrating to watch, especially when they went away from the run in the third quarter. But I think if Florida sticks to their guns, they can pull off a victory, but I just can't say right now that I could see them winning that game.
Yeah, and truthfully, we saw AR do it a couple times last year, with the Utah, the 360 pass into the what you just can't teach that. It's going to happen. It's what makes college football great. It's one of those things. I hopefully we get the win this year. We're going to move on to the next section, which is your worst ever remembrance of a Gators fan.
Oh God, there's a lot of bad that I could think of, but since I'm a Georgia guy and I'm a Florida Gator fan and I live in Georgia, it would have to be that 2012 game where Jordan Reed fumbles the ball in the end zone. Florida's undefeated going into that game, ranked number 2. I mean, they beat Georgia, they go to the SEC championship to play Alabama. But it was kind of a little bit of a blessing in disguise, I guess, because losing to Georgia meant that Georgia had to play Alabama, and we were at number 4, I believe, and got up to number 3. And we were just waiting for Notre Dame to lose. I mean, they had that close game. I believe it was with USC or Pitt or somebody. And I'm sitting there. They go into overtime, and I'm like, please beat Notre Dame. Please beat Notre Dame, because I want to go to the national championship. And so it was kind of a blessing in disguise that Florida lost to Georgia that year, because they could have went to the national championship anyway, not having to play in the SEC championship. But I would say that was probably one of the most upsetting games I ever watched, because, I mean, you picked off Aaron Murray 3 times, but then you turn the ball over 6 times on top of that, and then you throw picks in the end zone, and when you could have just took 3 or got a touchdown with Mike Gillislee. So I would say that was probably one of the worst games I've watched as a Florida Gator fan.
Gotcha. Yeah, and it's not all doom and gloom here at F is for Fanatics. So we're gonna cap that with a what is the what's your best memory as a Gator fan?
It's another Georgia moment, man. 2008. Stacked teams, man. Matthew Stafford, no Sean Marino going into Jacksonville. You got Percy Harvin and Tim Tebow, Brandon Spikes. 2 teams. I mean, I think Georgia was ranked preseason number 1 that year. I believe they were knocked down to number 5. Florida lost a game, but they lost to Ole Miss. I think they were ranked number 8 and played the number 5 team. Completely blew them out, 49-10. Georgia just didn't have an answer. Kept turning the football over. You had that pitch to Marino and he fumbles the pitch, and the offensive lineman for Florida picks it up, almost runs it back in. Percy Harvin wide open in the end zone after these turnovers. And I think that game was enjoyable just for me because I was at a Taco Mac with a bunch of Georgia fans there, and I was watching it, and I'm the only guy with like a Florida Gator shirt on, and everybody's just like staring at me, waiting for me to say something. Yeah, I'm just sitting there like, well, I didn't say a word. I was just sitting there chuckling, and they just saw me. And I would not say a word.
Now, was that Diesel David at the time?
Diesel David was actually 22. I actually shrunk and stopped working out for a while, and then recently got back into it in my 30s because I mean my parents have always been kind of unhealthy, so I kind of tried to stay on the healthy trajectory. So yeah, man, I've kicked it off probably about 4 years ago, 3-4 years ago. So yeah, but no, not really. I was 24, probably $145 at the time, but I'm sitting there at the table, I'm like just chuckling, and people are just staring at me, and I'm like, I won't say anything, but this is funny.
All right, and then so our last question. I don't know if you got to see, but our last question always is: what is your most fanatical moment? Holly has Aaron Rodgers a tablet. He no longer has a TV remote for his man cave TV. It's gone. So, what's your most fanatical moment? I mean, have you yelled at the wife? Have you thrown something?
We were playing South Carolina one year, and I believe that was the year that Kelvin Taylor ran in the game-winning touchdown. But we were in the lead by like 2 or 3 touchdowns, I believe. And then, like, come the fourth quarter, we just fell apart. And South Carolina was about to come back and win the football game. And I'm like, I'm upset. So South Carolina scores a touchdown, and I take my phone, and it's got a case on it and everything, and I throw it on a couch cushion. I'm like, damn it, man, like that, just throwing it down, like whatever. I was irritated. I broke the screen on it. How does a screen break on a cotton couch cushion?
Well, when you got cannons like you do, so that thing was going Mach 40, all right?
It had to have been. I mean, I didn't think I threw it that hard, but I guess I did.
So that gets a fanatic stamp of approval. We're getting something made up. I don't know if it's going to be a T-shirt or something, but you'll be getting something. I'll get your info. But thanks for coming on. I appreciate it. This is a brand new podcast. We are starting this thing from the ground up, and I'm glad the internet issues has fixed themselves. I'm sure it can be a bear sometimes when you're just trying to grind and get these things out in good quality, and sometimes it doesn't always work.
Oh yeah, it's a lot of work too. A lot of people don't understand, especially when you do it by yourself. There's a lot of video editing involved. There's a lot of just, I mean, audio editing if you have to edit the audio, video. And I'm always about supporting new podcasts, new shows. I'm support you and what you're doing here and just starting out and all that. And I think a lot of creators out there do really good jobs, phenomenal jobs. David Waters does a great job. I could probably name off 20 people that do phenomenal jobs for Florida Gators. And you can't get enough of them, man. I mean, there's variety everywhere. All the podcasts are great. It just depends on your personality, who you like listening to. Luckily, I have a following that likes to listen to me. I know other people do too. But I think the beat's always better when everybody just supports everybody, and don't go after them on Twitter, if you know what I
Yeah,
mean.
that's wild, isn't it?
Yeah,
So,
I'm
like
staying
I
out of
said,
that one.
yeah, far away. Yeah, they don't even know who I am, so I'm lucky. So, thanks again, Dave. And we are gonna get somebody else next week. We're gonna try to do a show every Saturday with somebody new. Dave, I'd love to have you on
Yeah, let's do it.
preseason or orange and blue, or after spring we can talk recruiting after we get a couple transfers. You're always welcome here at F is for Fanatics.
Awesome, man. Yeah, appreciate it, man. And anytime you want me on, man, shoot me a text, DM, whatever. I'll come on as long as I got time to do it, and I can arrange times. I'm very available for the most part during the week, and then the weekends, of course. We can discuss that. So anytime you want me on here, man, I'm more than welcome to come on.
All right, thank you. I appreciate it, and we will see you guys later. This is Cody with F is for Fanatic, and we will see you later.
Go Gators.